On this episode of Industry Relations, Rob and I discuss the recent CoStar and Move news, and we chat about ChatGPT. Let's go. This is Industry Relations, a podcast that's at the intersection of real estate and technology from an insider's perspective, with Rob Hahn and Greg Robertson.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Industry Relations with Rob and Greg. This is the notorious Rob Hahn, and of course, as always, the fabulous Greg Robertson, ladies and gentlemen. Woo!
Yeah. Hello, Rob. Listen, I've got a bone to pick with you before we get started here.
Okay.
Somebody called me Fab on Twitter. Fab.
Yeah, baby. Fab. Okay.
So this whole fabulous Greg Robertson, listen, I changed my Twitter moniker.
Yeah.
But I didn't sign up for being called Fab. Okay. That's
it's such a great Fab, dude.
It's not a great nickname.
I think there's a laundry detergent called Fab. Right? I'm pretty sure there's no laundry detergent called Greg.
Is that still around? I mean,
I don't know.
I do remember there
the
being
last time I did laundry.
But I do remember that. But I mean, all I can think about is Tide, and I don't get the laundry shopping done either. I mean, I gotta look that up, man. That's a good question.
How wedded are you to the name Greg? I'm just asking.
Shut up. Just shut up.
You could legally go change it,
Well, it's like, okay, let's see, the notorious ROB, so I'm just going to call you Not from now on.
I'd prefer it if you'd called me Naughty.
Oh, I'm sure there are people that do.
Oh, man. All right. So, obviously, today is Hat Day.
Yes.
I could put on some glasses so we could...
No, I got my Ducks hat. They beat the Capitals last night, so that's a good thing.
Yeah. I guess. Sports ball, I guess. It's so sad, like, how I pay so little attention to sports now. Like, I used to really be like a total junkie for college football and even NFL, and then COVID happened. I'm like, I don't give a shit. I don't need to watch any of this.
Well, I guess maybe next season we'll have you and Sonny come out and see the Chargers with us. We got some good seats over there at SoFi.
Sure,
have a good time.
Right. That might be fun. But all right, so on to real estate. Boy. There's stuff going on.
Yeah, I mean, so I guess I don't know if this, you kind of called it that CoStar was going to make a run at Realtor, but I guess Andy got cold feet, or I mean, who knows, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, he's saying he's going to focus on homes.com, but there's got to be more to the story than
So I just wrote a post about this.
Oh, okay.
So I've thought about it quite a bit, and we could talk about it here, right? Because the post is VIP. So start with the obvious, right? Okay. So first of all, in case anyone listening doesn't know, which seems impossible because it's everywhere.
Yeah, our 10 listeners would know this. So,
exactly. Yeah. They know. News Corp and CoStar have apparently broken off talks. There will be no acquisition of Move by CoStar
at this time.
Okay, at this time, right? So look, there's some obvious possible answers, right? Like one is just price was too high, right? Maybe News Corp went in, it's like we want $10 billion, and CoStar's like, yeah, you know what? We don't need to keep talking. Right? Like,
the juice was not worth the squeeze, right?
You're not even in the same universe of where we think this thing is worth. That's one possibility. The other possibility is NAR could have said no. I mean, we don't know. No, here's what I mean. We don't know what the operating agreement looks like. We mentioned it the last time we talked about this, right? We know it's friendly.
I don't know if NAR had the ability to say no to anything, but they could have took a look at the operating agreement going, well, if we did this, we'd have to do A, B, and C, and we don't want to do A, B, and C.
All I'm saying, since we don't know what the operating agreement is, the obvious one is maybe the operating agreement gives NAR the ability to say we are not going to license the Realtor brand to whoever acquires you next. Like we get to have a say, and NAR say, yeah, we're not licensing that to CoStar. So I'm just saying We don't know. It's a possibility. Those are like the easy ones, right?
Yeah.
And then there's the more complicated stuff, I think, which is, I think, probably the real story, right? So my overall thesis is that Andy Florence and CoStar have decided to build instead of buy, right? When it
Well,
comes
that's what he's
to,
saying, right?
that's at least what he's saying. But I mean, what I don't think he has a whole lot of reasons to lie about it. And what's interesting about it is, in the earnings call, Andy said that that Homes.com, their traffic is up 130% year over year.
Yeah.
Now, it's from a low base,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But still, they're now at 24 million monthly uniques, which is not nothing. That's actually all right.
Well, it's roughly Realtor's 5 times that, and Zillow's 10 times that, right?
I don't think Realtor's 5 times that. Realtor, last I looked, was just short of 90 million.
Well, let's see. I did a post about this and I looked at it, and
okay.
Now this is, I'm not sure this is apples to apples because this was average monthly uniques, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I did the math, and it was 5 times, but anyway, whatever, right?
Anyway, whatever. So my point is, and then at the same earnings call, he talked about how Homes.com was up 130%, Realtor.com was down 15%. And Realtor.com traffic over the last few years has been trending downward. They've been losing.
It was down last quarter for sure. Yeah.
Right. So I think if I'm Andy, and this is kind of what I wrote, it makes sense to go, hey, like, even if they were in talks and price wasn't an issue and license wasn't an issue, it could have been like, why would I pay so much money for a site that's losing traffic, right? When my own site is growing traffic like gangbusters. And if I'm going to spend $3 billion, I'd rather spend it on advertising and marketing my own site, right? And get it to 90 million as opposed to spending it on this other site, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
it's a good point.
To me, that seems to be generally at least what he stated, right? In the earnings call. So, that seems reasonable. The other thing, though, I think is when he went on and on about the business model, right? Like he got into some real depth about this. Let me see if I could actually pull up the earnings call transcript.
But still, I mean, and I'm interested to hear, because you listened to the whole thing. I did not, so I'm curious to hear what he said. But I still just don't, and we've talked about this before. If his goal is to beat Zillow, it's a fool's errand to me.
Okay.
I mean, so there's got to be some other angle, and maybe he kind of alluded to the other angle here than that. I mean, I just don't see it happening.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like he literally said during the earnings call, there's some competitive elements, and they don't want to make it too easy by just like laying everything out in the earnings call. But smart, analysts should be able to kind of read between the lines and figure stuff out, right? And I was like, challenge accepted. Here we go.
Exactly, yeah.
So let's see. So basically, he goes into this like long diatribe, right, about what the current competition is like. Basically, Zillow, Realtor.com, other portals, right? And he basically says it's about, selling buyer leads to these buyer agents, right, who aren't really that qualified. And so here's the language he used. So this is quoting Andy Florence from the earnings call. I've used some of these competing sites myself and submitted leads on properties I'm interested in. The experience is remarkably awful. The moment you submit a lead and for months afterwards, you're bombarded with cold calls from countless agents who have questionable qualifications. And I'm like, look, he's not wrong, right? Like, that does happen. It's not.
Well, I would wonder how long ago he did this, because I know that Zillow has made some changes and everybody else, because I think everybody figured out that, relying on agents to actually, hey, listen, if Andy got actual calls from agents back, that's a game changer. Right?
Yeah. Who knows?
I know Zillow had long taken over that process. So, but yeah.
But we do know, like, this is a thing. Like, you put your name into a real estate website, you could be getting a lot of spam. I mean, it does happen. It's not that
Yeah,
different
I
than
mean,
putting your name into a used like Carfax or something. Like you're gonna get a lot of emails from various dealers. The worst is if you ever go like health insurance shopping. Holy shit,
yeah.
that's
I remember
awful.
doing it when I was remember the loan ones, like have
Yeah,
have banks compete for your rate,
yeah,
right? I
yeah,
mean, I
yeah,
did that once long time ago, and
yeah,
like that was like the
yeah,
worst experience also.
yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, I don't know if Zillow does it that way.
I don't
I mean,
know either. I mean, yeah.
I should probably try and just go out there and like try the experience on Zillow and see what happens.
But the point is, again, whether that's true or not, it's immaterial. Like he believes
Right.
that that's true, right?
Yes.
And I think
For
from
sure.
his standpoint, he's really promoting the your listing, your lead model, right? Which is the basis of homes.com. So his whole point is on homes.com, we're going to connect the buyer, the browser, to the listing agent who knows the home the best, who knows the property the best. And this has been the mantra of the your listing, your lead crowd for
Well,
10
there's
years.
a lot of people
Right?
that would argue with you that thing anyway of like
Oh,
that the
agreed.
listing agent knows the most, right?
Agreed.
But
Like
yeah,
I'm not taking
yeah,
a position on that. All I'm saying is that's what Andy Florence
yeah.
seems to believe, and he's at least promoting, right? What's cool about it is that whether you agree with that or not, you have to at least agree that's different than Zillow and Realtor.com,
Oh,
right?
totally. Yeah,
It's at
yeah.
least different than every other real estate website out there, from a portal standpoint. So I think the
Yeah, on
challenge for
homes.com.
Andy
Yeah.
became, okay, let's say I buy realtor.com. I go spend 3 billion, I buy realtor.com. Now I've added 90 million traffic, unique visitors, right? But I really think this sort of selling buyer leads is an awful experience, right? And it's a bad business model because he talks about that as well. Then I have to transition and pivot realtor.com from doing we'll get the buyer, and then you know how they have the whole like we'll send you leads for 35% referrals and all that.
Yeah,
He would have to
Opcity. Yeah.
Yeah, the Opcity model. He would have to eliminate that and then transition all of them to this new your listing,
Well,
your lead model.
yeah,
Right?
which is exactly what he did with homes.com though, right? He
Correct.
fired the staff,
Correct.
right, of the salespeople. So he's been, which is remarkable to me. He just flushed down all that revenue down the toilet, right?
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
But it's one
Yeah.
thing, like with homes.com, how much revenue did he flush down the toilet? You know what I mean? Like,
I mean, it's not there anymore.
My point is he didn't spend that much either. But if you spend 3 billion, right, and then you flush a couple hundred million, down the toilet, then your ROI math gets completely wonky.
Right. He's
like now your payback periods.
It's not exactly Elon Musk buying Twitter fucking failure, but yeah.
I don't know that that's a failure yet, but that's a whole different point.
Yeah.
They're
not making money.
Let's put it this way. Elon didn't buy Twitter to make money, right? And Andy would buy realtor.com to make money.
Yeah, I guess the thing is how much do you want to lose, right?
Exactly. And I think the math just didn't work out.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I believe because he genuinely believes the business model is so different. So from that standpoint, he has to build. Like there's no portal he could acquire now, if that's true, right? Because there's no portal out there that, I mean, you could do little tuck-ins, right? You could buy some site with 1 million users for $1 million, something like that. That's just buying traffic, right? But there's no major portal. You can't buy Redfin. Like it's the same logic. Okay, you buy Redfin, you'd have to completely transition that business model, fire all the agents, and then like, okay, so now what's your payback period, right? It doesn't make
right.
So at this point, I think it's fair to say that CoStar is probably not in the portal buying business, right? Because of this. And I think that's probably the important thing. So if you have a big portal out there, and you're thinking my exit is CoStar, it ain't gonna happen. I don't think that's, the way forward.
Unless the price becomes so attractive that, as you said, surrendering that revenue isn't such a delta there that you can overcome.
Sure. It would have to be something like that. So the other interesting thing, though, is some of the other stuff, like the details, because that's what I do, right? I mean, there's plenty of Wall Street analysts out there who are way smarter than I am, and they're actually licensed to advise people on this. So, they'll do that thing on the investment side. What I looked at was some of the other things that came out, right? One thing that I saw that was kind of interesting is how they're doing this free buyer agent directory, right?
Yeah.
And this exists on homes.com right now. You go,
Yes.
there's this whole agent directory. There's no fee, there's no referral, there's nothing. It's like you just pick the one that that you want to work with. And what Andy said about that is, I'll read it to you. We are not just providing value to the agents with the listing, though. We're making it easier for buyers to find agents who have expertise and experience that are the best match for the needs of those buyers, and then facilitating connecting with them and collaborating with them without us trying, again, inject ourselves in the process inappropriately. Our product development released a robust agent directory, blah, blah, blah. And the whole point is that this is free, right? That's what he claims. So I don't think he's going to be charging those. Maybe he will, because it's not about a lead. It's just like some user came, found you, right? If you get business from them, then you owe us some money or something like that. Who knows, right? But what occurred to me about that is you actually can't do that unless your base business model, you really believe in your listing your lead, right? Because if it's about buyer leads, then you can't go and alienate your customer base by promoting this other buyer agent over here, right? Who hasn't paid you, right? And I was like, okay, this might really signal, at least it signals to me, that Andy's very serious about, you're listing your lead, about monetizing seller side of things, monetizing online ads. And he doesn't care about buyer agency. He doesn't care about that stuff, right? He's not looking to make money from buyer agents, which then implies he's going to be able to do some shit that other companies have tried and did not succeed, right? Things like agent ratings, right? So this is why I wrote my post. Remember that whole kerfuffle around like Redfin agent ratings and HomeLight and even HAR to some extent, right?
Right. I think the agent ratings, it was more, wasn't it? It was more transactions, right? Not ratings.
It was transactions. But if you go on homes.com, you look at the agent directory, it has transactions, price points, right? It has that data.
I mean,
presumably,
you can go to realtor.com and they have a find a realtor section also that has, you put a zip code in, it lists them out. It lists, it's a little bit less information here from what I can see, but I mean, this says price range within the last 24 months, experience for 17 years, the area served.
Yep.
It shows the 21 listings. So it does some transaction data. So this is not having an agent directory that's free is not.
No, with not
transaction.
Yet. Completely agree. And I'm not saying what homes.com has today is that. What I'm saying though is when Andy Florence says, that they want to help buyers find agents who have the expertise experience that are a best match for their needs. That says to me, unless he's just talking a lot of bullshit out of his mouth and this agent directory is that, I could easily see them going to, you know what? We're now going to do more product development. We're going to start putting some algorithms, some AI, whatever else, and start saying, hey, you know what? These 4 are the agents that we think are the best match, and here's reasons why. Agent ratings, service level computations, responsiveness, all this type of stuff that they could potentially do and actually deliver value to buyers and those few buyer agents. I'm saying CoStar can do that because they're not relying on them to buy buyer leads from them. Right? It's just like an extra bonus. Right? Whereas Zillow, Realtor.com, they would have a tougher time doing that. Zillow maybe doesn't care because Zillow's whole thing is we only want to work with the best of the best agents. Right.
So they're already getting them.
So they kind of feel like they're already doing that. But there is something to be said. It may not be the best of the best of the best in terms of.
But block that out. I've been managing people for 30 years, right? Mm-hmm. And there's always this thing of like, there's his side, her side, or his side, and then there's the truth, right? Mm-hmm. And in real estate, transactions can get messy, right? So they might get, a bad rating or whatever else. But I tell you, does any agent, if they get a bad rating from somebody and they happen to list property still and their name shows up there and it says shitty ratings on it, they're not going to stand for that. They're not going to want to do that. No matter if it's an algorithm or something a customer said or anything else. I mean, they might have the ability to do that now, but hey, if I'm listing a house on, and homes.com is the only site that's going to be my face, yeah, it's my listing, my lead, but it's also saying this one, and I'll, I know what happened here. It's not exactly, there's two sides of the story, and this guy was a terrible client, right? But it's the only site out there that gives me 2 stars. Right. I mean,
like I said, who knows what the implementation is?
Yeah, I don't know if that's a good, I think you're right. There are different business models you could follow, but I would kind of put the brakes on a little bit of something like that. But yeah.
Yeah. Who knows? I'm just relating, like, this is what came out, and we don't know because what exists today is no different than what you're going to find on Zillow and on realtor.com. Right. It just made me think, okay, but if you're not relying on buyer agents, buyer leads from your money, then it gives you a lot more flexibility to do more. That might piss off buyer agents. Again, you're right. I'm just an agent and I have a bunch of listings and I do business with CoStar. But on the buyer side, somehow I'm getting rated, crappy. So I don't like that. I guess we'll cross that bridge. But, as you and I both know, like a lot of the top agents, they don't really do buyer business anymore anyway. Like, I don't know of a single team leader who's like doing buyer business. They keep the few clients, longtime clients. They'll service those.
Yeah, but yeah. I mean, I think buyer business, they're not going to turn away business, but they might be focusing.
It goes to some agent on their team, right? They're not that concerned with the buy side business.
But the teams are its own separate thing, right? I mean, average agent out there is not going to turn away business. They might focus on listings, which they should.
Sure.
But if something comes up, if a friend, relative, or whatever, they're going to do that. Sure. And then to put it, if somebody goes to homes.com and sees, I've got a listing from this agent that's got 2 stars. I mean, it's just it's not a good experience.
Yeah, on the other hand, like if I'm homes.com and I'm completely laser focused on seller side business and monetizing that side, the listing side, your listing, your lead thing, I don't know that I care that much about the average agent who does 3 listings a year.
Right. I mean, but if it's, but again, if it's your listing, right, and your face is up there and your rating is on there and it says 2 stars and it's your listing.
Yeah.
It's, I mean, yeah, it's, who's going to contact me? Because it looks like I'm a shitty agent.
Well, I mean, no buyer's going to contact you, but you already have a listing, right? And
right, but I need to get it sold, though. Right, I need
all those leads are going to come to you. You can explain to the buyer and try and double end the deal, whatever. I mean, who the hell knows, right? I don't know. I'm just saying what's interesting about it is that it does allow the possibility that homes.com could be much more aggressive about rating buyer agents, about some of that stuff than others have been able to. Right.
Well, I would look at it this way. The other thing that it does is it's obviously dual agency, right? So it does give the ability of increasing the chances that they're going to be able to monetize both sides of the transaction, which means there's kind of more money on the table there, which means, are the agent going to be open to providing things they hadn't done in the past, whether it's a pass through or they're just going to buy a package that has a certain amount of agent or listing enhancement products on there. Now, that's another crowd you're going to get in a tangle with, because there's a lot of people that think, in some places it's actually illegal, right? So,
sure.
But some people think that dual agent thing should have stopped a long time ago.
I think most professionals think it should have, but when they say that, though, they almost invariably mean single agent dual agency.
Right.
They never apply it to single brokerage dual agency. Yeah. They don't apply it to teams, right? So it's like, all right, whatever, in any event. So the reason why I bring that up is because the most interesting part of the call for me, and I understand it's because of my personal obsession, I totally get that. But when he talked about how in the last year, they've unified the HomeSnap and the Homes.com backend. It's now one backend, right? And they talked about how they have 1 million agents registered on the Homes.com platform. He didn't say with Homes.com. He said Homes.com platform, and I thought that was significant. right? So I wanted to kind of get your take on it. The reason for it is over the years, man, I've spoken to a lot of agents, right? I don't recall a single agent at any time saying, "Oh yeah, man, I'm advertising Homes.com." Like they don't. Homes.com doesn't even cross their lips. I've not honestly in the last 5 years. I don't think I've ever heard an agent mention Homes.com. Right? They always talk about Zillow. They talk about Realtor. They talk about Redfin, even Open Door. I've not once heard any agent talk about Homes.com. Right?
Yeah, I
They
mean,
have
it's
talked about
definitely
Home Snap.
right.
Right?
For sure.
So how is it that you have this million people on Homes.com platform? It has to be through HomeSnap, right? And that's how they're able to get
Yeah.
the agent profiles and all that stuff, right?
Yeah. Homes.com has had this Homes Connect product or program. And, when back in the day, before they turned into a broker like it is, they're a syndicator. And part of the value package, I think, with MLSs is that their agents may have gotten a free tool sets of something from homes.com, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I can, think, we all know the math, right? I mean, if you get 75 MLSs on that platform, right, you've got a million people that have access to, not to say that they're using it every day or anything else,
Correct.
but, if you look if I go on to some of these Clarity dashboards or the SSO dashboards for some MLSs, sometimes I do see a homes.com icon on there.
Sure.
And that links to a certain set of tools on there. So it's not to me a million for homes.com platform. The platform isn't really homes.com, the portal, but there are other things that they've signed up through the MLS that they can call. And that number doesn't surprise me that they would say that. But
No,
any meaningful thing would be, it's got to be HomeSnap, right? But we can talk about HomeSnap. I mean, I was surprised the other day. I was talking to somebody about it and I forgot their name because I just don't hear about it as much as you were from the MLSs. And it's kind of like, it's no secret. I think the industry is a little bit wary of CoStar, and therefore wary of HomeSnap. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that's getting the traction and anything, or certainly not the promotion from those MLSs that it used to in the past. So, that's lost a little bit of its luster, a little bit, right?
No
don't
doubt.
you think? I mean,
no
my
doubt.
opinion.
No doubt. Yeah. All I'm saying is HomeSnap is the reason why Homes.com platform has 1 million users, which I think is pretty clear, right? And it's not the HomeSnap of the last year. I mean, it's the HomeSnap, that was out to like, it's a free, member benefit to all your people, blah, blah, blah. And then CoStar came and acquired them, and then everyone's like, oh my God, we're terrified. And
that's another revenue source he gave up, right? Was he stopped charging $1 per member per month on that thing.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
And he stopped. Yeah. And he talked about how they're scaling down some of the HomeSnap revenue, like the social media marketing type stuff. He's like, yeah, we're going for something else. Right. So now the good news is that was only like 7 million a year or something like that. And they're like, we don't care. I don't, CoStar's like, whatever. I mean, the real estate vertical did 75 million. Like, okay.
Is that true though? Have they stopped selling, advertising for HomeSnap? I mean,
no, it's not that. It's what he said is they transition a lot of the salespeople from selling that stuff to selling something else.
Right.
So there's a pivot underway with HomeSnap as well. My point simply is they have this back end, right, that's not unified. And HomeSnap is much more of, I guess I'll call it like a utility for real agents platform than a portal, right? If you will.
It's the professional tool is the way he puts it.
Kind of, yeah. Kind of. That's I guess that's a great way of putting it. I was just thinking of like Zillow Super App and stuff like that. There's components that we know are more agent oriented. It's the whole what's the new brand name they call Showing Time Plus?
Yeah.
Right? It's a little bit like that. So Notion, this isn't really for consumers, right? This
is if you
for
think about it, really it's Zillow trying to have more of agent pro tools and a unified brand in response to, I think, what CoStar is doing,
right?
With HomeSnap and stuff, right? Yeah,
I agree. But I thought it was interesting in the sense that the most important professional tool for agents is the MLS. And the MLS is the only entity that can stop something like, buyer agent ratings or sophisticated buyer agent matching or stuff like that, right? And that's who stopped the other previous efforts, right? They're the ones who went to Redfin. They're the ones who went to Homeline. It's like, hey, if you keep doing this, we're going to cut off your feed, right? And they're like, okay, we give. With Homes.com, they're getting their feed through 10x. So they probably could still exert that leverage today. What I think about is, okay, but if HomeSnap and Homes.com are unified, right, it leads to yet the second interesting thing, which you and I have discussed over and over and over again on this program. But let's discuss it again because, the industry likes to hear the same thing over and over, connect the dots, which is listing data is not copyrightable, right? What's copyrightable are the photographs. And we know.
Well, I think isn't the compilation of the data copyrightable or something,
that's a Mitch
right?
Skinner thing. I mean, who knows? I don't even know how that applies. Like, look, I'm CoStar. I went in and I literally copied bedroom, bathrooms, linoleum tile, and granite countertop. Is that a compilation? I didn't take a compilation. I took data elements that's not copyrightable. And you have this back end. That's a professional tool. It's not that hard for me to think that one day they could just be like, look, we have all the data, right? Do you want photos? We have all the photos. We have a team of professionals went out and took all these photos, right? Why don't we make it life easier for you? Just like attach it here and go, right? And the reason I'm saying that's kind of interesting is suppose an MLS were to go to CoStar, not today. Today they would get, they would have leverage. But 2-3 years from now and go, hey, either stop this buyer agent, rating thing, or we're going to cut you off. Right? And CoStar was, all right, cool. Right? Cut us off. Right? Because we have all your agents on our back end. They're all utilizing our photos and our this and that and the other thing. And the data is not copyrighted. So all we're doing is attaching those photos, the media, to the data we already have. Ask the agent to update the data if there's any changes. And then we're going to put it on homes.com. Right? And oh, by the way, that back end, what is that?
I know what you're going to say.
What is that? Right?
Does it have 3 letters?
Correct. Which then gets us in the conversation about Sam DeBoard and his conversation with ChatGPT.
Right. Okay. So a couple things in there, right? First of all, we have all the photos, right? I mean, that's just that one sentence alone is like, you're giving a hell of a lot of credence to like the marketing efforts of homes.com and their ability to upsell agents, a majority of the agents on the MLS on their services, not the other myriad of services are out there, not to even mention what Zillow's got coming down the pipe, right? With their acquisition, right? So that's one thing. And then the second sentence you said, which to me is kind of a non-starter, is, so we have the agents update the listing data. Okay. Full stop. That's not going to fucking happen. Right.
Why?
Because, if you're going to ask an agent to do anything extra, that's just the nature of the beast. They're not going to do it. Right. And third, it's like, what, does that mean going forward, you might have that snapshot of data might be good for an hour. Okay. But if it's not being constantly updated by the new changes and everything else, that data gets stale like that.
Sure.
Right?
Who's updating that data?
Well, it would be every agent that belongs to the MLS. So you're saying.
So you're telling me that agents are glad to update the data for the MLS? But
well, I mean, I think they're okay to say this is going from pending to sold, right? But
that's,
but I mean,
that's such a minor thing,
Again, I mean, I don't, your supposition, it thinks that everybody's gone there. If it's splinters and some people are on that homes.com platform or HomeSnap and some aren't, well, now it's, now you got other problems, right? You can't make a good CMA. You can't, what is the offer of, this is why it's getting there of, what's the cooperation? What's the compensation? What's, what to listings that go, if you're on HomeSnap's platform, is there an agreement that they go on Zillow as well? Or does that have to be all set up?
Of course not. Well, it's not going on Zillow. If
okay, well then, that's again a non-starter, because we've seen that happen with the Dyna, right? In other places, like when the seller says, hey, why is my listing on Zillow? Well, Zillow's kind of complicated, and we've discovered that this and that, and we're not going to, well, okay. So when is my listing going on Zillow? Well, this and that. Okay. I want to cancel the contract, because if you're not going to put my listing on Zillow, I'm out. Mm-hmm. I just don't see that. I just, those scenarios, I just don't see happening.
Okay. We've beaten that horse, God, over the last 10 years so much. So, we don't have to beat that horse now. All I'm suggesting, I think, is this is clearly the direction. Right. So, my thing was, there's this now to me, and we've talked about it before. Why does Zillow go and spend money and buy VX? I think it's VXR or VRX or whatever the company name is, right? The media company. Why are they doing showing time? God, my memory's going, man. I need turmeric and coconut oil. The media marketplace, and Zillow's willing to go out and take photos and do 3D tours and all this wonderful shit, right? Because Zillow knows, they're smart. They see the threat. They're like, oh my God, we have to get in on this game, because we cannot have it be where all the photos and the 3D tours and the media is owned by CoStar, right? And that's the only piece of the listing data that is copyrightable, right? Like, we just can't have it, So Zillow's doing what they're doing. So I'm not saying CoStar's going to win. That's not what I'm saying, right? You're right. All those scenarios, and CoStar's going to have to deal with the opposition, like competition. They're going to have to deal with that. All I'm suggesting is what this clearly points to is like the strategic direction, right?
Yeah.
That it's about getting that back, and it's about getting that data. And the one thing I will say about CoStar, though, the one advantage CoStar has over Zillow, they have it over everybody, is their research team is second to none. Right? Second to none. They've honed it over 20 years in commercial
for commercial properties.
Right. And
so they have no experience in residential, though.
They have no experience, but research is research, right? Content creation is content creation.
I don't know about that.
Dude, it's like saying I've been a book publisher for 30 years. I have all this expertise in book publishing, and now I'm going to start a magazine. Yeah, it's different, but there's a lot of crossover. There's a lot. I don't know.
Stuff. It might be more close to like I was in book publishing, and now I want to be a film.
What are you talking about, dude? They're not completely different disciplines. In other words, so think of it this way, and I'm bringing this up because you mentioned agents aren't going to do anything, right? That's extra. Okay, cool. But if you're getting a phone call from a, nice young man, hey, I just have a couple questions. Can you take 1 minute to answer? Does this house have granite countertops? That's not that much of effort.
Man, Jesus. That's yeah. How many houses?
I'm just saying it actually makes the agent's job easier. It's like, instead of you having to go in and update all this, we'll do it for you. Just answer these questions. We'll do it for you, right? Who knows? I'm not saying that's what they're going to do. I'm just pointing out that CoStar has a long track record of being really good at research, right? Really good at getting the photos, the videos, the media, all that stuff. They have a track record of that. Zillow does not. I'm not saying they can't build it. I'm not saying they can't compete. I'm just saying CoStar has a track record in that no one else in our industry does. But no one else, I don't think, in maybe any industry does, right? That's all. And they have like 15,000 people doing that. And in the earnings call, what Andy mentioned is, it wasn't Andy, actually, it was the CFO, that Lisa Ruggles, who's like head of that research group, has, quote, significant resources now to throw at this. I'm like, dude, that's actually more significant, right? So all I'm saying is, like, that's the trend. That's the direction. It explains Zillow's moves. It explains, Zillow's moves. And then, of course, the rest of the industry we're not paying attention. So let me illustrate by this. I've heard, and I think you're the one of those guys who told me, at Inman, when news hit that CoStar was in talks to buy Realtor.com, that was like the topic. That was the only thing people could talk about.
Yeah.
I'm sitting here like, why wasn't that the case when CoStar said we brought in all those contractors who are creating residential content? We brought them in-house as full-time employees, and they're now part of the CoStar research department. To me, that should have been the talk of the town when that happened.
I think that's more nuanced and is the biggest story is something buying another company. I mean, but just to segue,
Mhm.
maybe
So now,
according, yeah,
yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was saying, now take Sam's, whole
Yeah.
Twitter thread, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's, we got a lot of great feedback from our last podcast. I think you did a wonderful job of kind of mapping out where we are right now. Where, what are we in? And, the things that we got out of that to me was,
I appreciate that.
In a world of cooperation and compensation as being the main value proposition of an MLS, if that compensation goes away or becomes much, is much less of part of that value proposition,
Yep.
You don't have that carrot of compensation to make everybody cooperate together.
Yep.
The MLSs are going to have come up with a new value proposition to keep brokers interested in still being part of an MLS.
Yep.
And I think that's a huge opportunity. So any vendors out there, I know I'm thinking about this every day. If somebody can figure that out, right, of how to kind of give that, that's going to be a big win. But we might be talking about,
but that's not the topic of our thing. So
I think I've got an idea also, but not to share on this podcast either. But
not this podcast.
But the other thing is, though, Sam DeBoer basically, he told me that it was he wrote an article based upon our podcast.
Yep.
And there might be much ado about nothing in regards to the compensation question as being part of the value proposition for an MLS. So Sam did something very clever, which is he asked ChatGPT, and we'll put the link in the show notes. And it was a wonderful post. I mean, if you have not, I'm going to probably do this at the end of this podcast. Is put up on Vendor Alley.
He put on LinkedIn, I believe. Yeah.
He put on LinkedIn, and it's been shared on Twitter. I'll put it on Vendor Alley and the show notes here. But he asked ChatGPT of basically, let me see if the query was, what is the value of an MLS in real estate? And it listed out a ton. It's a very nuanced, you got to go read his article. But you know what? It didn't really focus on?
What?
Compensation. Okay. Right? It focused on a number of things: efficiency, speed, integrity, standardization, fairness, transparency, broader services, data accuracy, most information, more informed advice, more accurate pricing, better decisions, all of these benefits of being part of an MLS. But none of it really, it was just a very small mention about the compensation. And how MLSs are better for buyers and sellers because, with the compliance issues and everything, it makes everything more accurate and they can have better decision making because of that. So maybe, based upon this stuff, Sam came up with there's really 4 C's, not the 2 C's, right? And, it's not just cooperation and compensation, but, cooperation, compensation, consistency and compliance is what he was saying, right? So I felt really good after reading this thing. Right? I mean, it's inertia, but there's a lot there that I think we didn't really scratch the surface of, that maybe we are a little bit worried about this too much. Maybe there isn't too much to worry about. I know that probably makes the hairs in the back of your neck stand up, Rob, but I mean,
no.
What say you?
So I say on this podcast what I tweeted to Sam when he put this, which is, look, the article's fantastic. And those values that he raises, that is the benefit, right? That is the value without compensation. But what I tweeted to him was, now ask ChatGPT what the value of having 600 MLSs is. And I haven't checked my answers to that. But here's the thing. Everything that he talks about, efficiency, fairness, speed, standardization, integrity, data accuracy, blah, 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 is much easier, much more effective if you have one MLS.
Right.
There's no argument for multiple MLSs based on what ChatGPT produced.
Okay. So from
Right?
what I remember reading about the response to why 600 MLSs or whatever was, ChatGPT. I can't believe we're fucking. Should we call? I mean,
Right.
what pronouns are we using nowadays? I don't even know. But it basically was saying it came back with that the number of MLSs are decreasing, and I think we all kind of saw that article from Swanepoel.
Sure.
And that they are memberships are rising, but the number of MLS has decreased by 2.9% or something. I think from I don't know if it was last year or from 2020. I was really surprised that membership has gone up 29% since 2020, but it did make a slight drop of 5.4%. I think from 2022 to 23. But I digress. It also said that there might be some advantages because of local markets that having a individual MLS in a local market might have, but that's for the market to decide. So the market has been deciding to shrink the number of those things down, right? So
that's nonsense, right? That's ChatGPT doing typical ChatGPT things. It's like on the one hand, this, on the other hand,
ChatGPT, bad ChatGPT.
I mean, I've been playing with ChatGPT and it does a lot of that shit, right? Especially when it's sort of about, there's some pros and some cons, right? And because the cons, let's talk about the cons, but it leads to lots of inefficiencies, double overlap, multiple payments. I mean, it talks about all of that too, right?
Yeah.
So, we could say it's, local, whatever. It's like there's no proof anywhere that a local MLS delivers efficiency, integrity, standardization, fairness better than a local branch of a single national MLS.
Right. I guess that wasn't part. Maybe that's part of the question. Maybe that's a question to be answered or asked.
Right. And so, fact of the matter is, like, I'm bringing this conversation up in the context of this discussion about HomeSnap and the back end and all this fight among giants is, if the value of the MLS is around efficiency, speed, standardization, compliance, blah, 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 that is much easier, much better for agents, for consumers, for the industry, if they're one MLS, right? With multiple branch offices, right? In a way, it's a little bit like talking about cell phone providers, right? It's much better to have one cell phone provider so we're on the same, and obviously we did it through legislation saying you all have to communicate. Because I remember, do you remember back in the day, early on, there were like two major sort of mobile solution technologies, time division and code division? Anyway, there are two things. But through legislation, they say you guys need to be able to talk to each other, right? Because we can't have it where if I'm on Verizon, I can't call a friend who's on AT&T and vice versa, right? So, like it's almost like that. If what we want is efficiency, speed, standardization, fairness, then we should have one national MLS, right? And 600 of them, and all of the associates that rely on them, they all need to go away.
But yeah, no, okay. So let's say I agree with that. I mean, but that's not where the conversation started, right? The conversation started with
compensation. Right?
If fucking compensation goes away, we're fucked.
That's right.
And I think I walked away from reading Sam's article and reading, this responses from ChatGPT of thinking, God, yeah, are we, God forbid that we're overreacting, Rob. I mean, I know we don't do that.
We never do that.
We never do that here at all.
Yeah,
we don't never speculate or overreact or have the doomsday scenarios ever.
No, not ever.
I mean, but it does kind of ring, I think, some of that rhetoric back and puts me back in a more, my chakras are a little bit more aligned now, where I was really like after that going, God damn, yeah, I mean, this could be it, man. This could be it. But it's also a different thing to be able to communicate that to brokers in a certain, so that they get that they understand what they're going to give up if they leave an MLS. If they think that, you know what, I got 20% of listings in this thing, screw it, I'm out, right? Mm-hmm. Will they understand what they're actually losing, right? And I think that's that communication is going to be a challenge also, because there's always going to be, that threat for sure.
No, I suppose, unless you don't give up anything. Right.
What do you mean by that?
So, like, if you could imagine a scenario where something like what we're talking about, there's this giant national back end, right? From two giant companies, one from CoStar, one from Zillow, right? And neither are saying we're an MLS. That's not what it is. They're just saying we're like a data utility to make it a little bit easier for you to get listings onto various portals and blah 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 and conduct business, right? And then compensation goes away. And then a broker says, well, I have 20% of listings in this market, right? But I could just process all that through this back end, right? And all the listings end up on Zillow and on homes.com anyway. So if I need to bring a buyer, right? Because right
So
now,
they
no,
get to
here's
use
why.
the service for all the other things, but they
Yeah.
just opt out of displaying it anywhere.
No, it's not an opt. You're thinking about this, but I'm saying I'm opting out of the MLS because I don't get it. Like I don't get the compensation piece of what I need to be part of this network.
Well, for all the other reasons we just talked about, right?
But I get that through Zillow and through homes.com.
You get compliance, and you get. I mean, by just the accuracy, you don't get the accuracy.
You say compliance, but how many brokers and agents out there like, hey man, I really need to join this MLS because they do awesome compliance.
Well, no, but the compliance helps them make that data accurate, makes that data fresh, makes that it enables that database to be better so that it is more accurate, that the buyers have better information, sellers have better information.
And you're telling me it's like
pricing
somehow
and everything else
impossible for a giant $35 billion corporation to put in a compliance department?
Yeah, we've had this discussion before.
Yeah, I mean, of course not, right? So my point simply is if compensation goes away and there's this back-end alternative, it's not irrational for a broker or an agent to be like, I have 25% of the listings. I'm not going to get compensation anyway, so I don't care whether I belong to this network or not. Just show me which one's the easiest to give me the efficiency, the accuracy, the speed, the integrity, all of that. Right? If that's the local MLS, fine, stick with the local MLS. If that's something else, go there. Right?
Yeah.
And I think that's the piece that the MLSs, the associations, Sam DeBoard, like they haven't grasped that next piece. Like if compensation goes away, right, and you now are competing purely on data accuracy, efficiency, integrity, blah, 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 then there's absolutely no reason why one local MLS would do better than a different local MLS, that a local MLS would do better than a regional MLS, and more to the point, that a local MLS would do better than some giant portal. Right? And that might be terrifying. Right?
Yeah. But nobody up to this point, and this would take, has been able to say this, we're offering this, right? So yeah.
But that's because up to this point and even today, because look, compensation hasn't gone away yet, right? Like it still exists. Like you can't break that network effect. That's a very powerful thing. But we're talking about is if that goes away, then what? I'm like, the then what is you then have to compete on the basis of efficiency, speed, integrity, compliance, fairness, transparency, broader services, right? And if you're trying to tell me that 1,000-person MLS in fucking middle of Iowa is going to do that better than Bright or CRMLS or CoStar or Zillow, I'm going to need to see some proof. I'm going to need to be convinced that you could do that stuff better. Right? You can do the compliance and the local networking better. I get that. But that's where Sam DeBoard's sort of thing needs to go from a conversational standpoint. Because quite frankly, the next meeting of CMLS, the next meeting of RESO, the next meeting of NAR at midyear, if you're an MLS person and you're not having this conversation, I have to be like, what conversation are you having? What are you talking about if you're not talking about this? Right? So, yeah, more doomsday from from Rob and Greg goes,
Well, I want to, right before we end here, I do want to make just a request. Hey, if you are guys, we didn't get a sponsor for February, but March is completely available. So if you're interested in supporting this podcast, we would really appreciate it. Just reach out to us. We'll put the link in the show notes, but please think about sponsoring this podcast, Industry Relations. We're getting a lot of good feedback from the industry, and I think it's growing. I know it's growing, looking at the stats. So, love to have anybody join us as a sponsor.
And even if you're not a sponsor, you know what you could also do to help us is just share the podcast. If you're watching this YouTube, click that, smash that like button, baby, subscribe, all that jazz. That also
absolutely
helps. Awesome. All right, cool, man. I can't. Once again, let's try and leave on a happy note.
What's more happy than sending us money, Rob? Come on.
Exactly.
What could be more happy?
Exactly. And I think the happy note should be, I would like to know in the comments, or if you're seeing this on Twitter or whatever, just reply. Do you think Greg should change his first name to Fab? Yes or no? Just.
Oh, God, I'm going to kill you. I swear to God.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Ciao, y'all.